about the Church of Scientology?
Church of Scientology again? Oh no! What about the Church of Scientology?
Right, so we are 8 years after we...
Wow, 8 years already.
Right.
History, huh? Okay.
After we left the church.
Yeah.
What is the main difference of Dror Center being the part of the church and now when it is independent?
You know what? That period, 8 years and prior, is like so far away, really forgotten. So you ask me about it and I try to look at it again. We could not create with the tech. You see, the false datum that they spread is that they own the tech, they being, of course, Mr. Miscavige and a few people around him. RTC owns the tech. It's their monopoly. Only they understand it, only they know it, and they tell you what to do. So our CSs were given dictates from above, what to run, how to run, what is the correct, proper sequence on the bridge, how to CS cases, what you have to do with the case. And the CS was afraid to work for the individual, okay? So that was on tech lines. Later, after we left the church, we found out.
Hold on. Let me just clarify. So when you're telling that CS was, so he was prevented from inventing new tech, or for
Heavens forbid. No. Nobody's inventing new tech, but the CS works for the individual. And when the CS is afraid of what might happen to him when the photo goes up lines, because the PC with the photo, they go to an AO or to flag when the person finishes his services here. And if the CS knows that what is expected of him, of them, is constantly to sec check, or everybody must now do a few hundred hours of objectives, or this or that is the way it has to be done, and the CS cannot look at the case as it is and apply the tech correctly to it based on his study of the tech. So that is one major area. After we left the church and we researched and we gathered all LRH materials and we researched the tech and we studied it correctly from pure LRH references, we found out that in the church, OT levels have been falsified, have been altered, have not been delivered properly. A very clear, flagrant example is OT2. Because OT2 should be run a few months, it's a big level. In the church, I did my OT2 in one session, and not in one day, in one session. And many, many more such examples. So one thing is the tech lines. That now we have a fantastic technical team here, yourself, Aviv, Tami, Moti, Dima. We have a very good tech team here, all highly trained, and we work with LRH's tech without any arbitraries, without any interference. That's obvious. And then on my lines, the admin lines, the management lines, we were constantly pressured to raise donations and take actions that are not for the good of the group, not for the group of the individuals. So I could not run the place correctly and properly, and we were not allowed to create. To create meaning marketing, advertising, promotional actions. The newsletter that we used to issue once a month had to go for approval to some terminal, LRH.com or somebody at the Tel Aviv org.
Even it was in Hebrew.
Even though it was in Hebrew and we did it here locally, they said, no, send it to us, we have to approve it. Of course, you could not invent anything, create anything, advertise anything, any printed materials, because all the time you have to be under strict control by somebody from above. Anyhow, this is over, okay? The last 8 years we have been very busy studying the technology, delivering the full technology. You see, up until 2012, of course, we could not even take a person to clear. So the most we could do is new era Dynetics, on a PC. And then when maybe he went clear, we had to send him to Copenhagen, to AOSH EU, to do the CCRD. Now this costs the guy thousands of euros. He has to go there. If he is given R factor non-clear, he has to come back, or he stays. Months go by, delays. The person is not getting good service, and very costly to him. Now when a person does a test clear, we already lose our public. He's continuing at an AO. And we saw that we could not get new public to come in because of the very bad reputation we had being part of the Church of Scientology, which earned itself rightly a very bad reputation of a horrible cult. So nobody wants to be in a horrible cult. In Israel, nobody wants to be part of the Church of Scientology. They managed to give Ron Hubbard a bad name. So Ron Hubbard, who you and I admire and hold him as the greatest genius that ever lived. I mean, a great man, the greatest man who ever lived and created and gave so much to us, to mankind. His name has become a bad name. He's been vilified by the Church of Scientology because of the terrible things that they do, and they attribute it to Ron Hubbard, like declaring people suppressives for no reason, disconnection policy, and many, many more crimes that they're committing in the name of Ron Hubbard.
It's a name. Yeah, it's a shame. So, you personally were on the flag lines, right?
Yeah.
You were in the church.
I was at Flag from 1989 until 2010, 2011. How many years does that make? 21 years, I think, more maybe. Yeah, 89 to 2010. So 21 years I was a Flag public. When I first arrived at Flag in 89, it was a great place. It was fun. A lot of kids, a lot of people. People running around. Tammy and I did all our training there. Our kids were there. I did my L11, first thing I did at Flag. And then, of course, my OT levels, all the way, well, from solo course, solo 2, all the way up to OT6, and, of course, many years, 14 years on solo notes.
Wow.
Solo net for OTs, or they call it OT7. So 21 years at Flag, and hundreds or thousands of hours of auditing there, and all my bridge there, and all my training there.
So
Yeah.
you tasted it all.
Yeah, yeah. And for the most part, I had a great time there and fantastic wins.
Good. Can you share some?
Well, you know, in those days, one thing that comes to mind, once a year we went back to Flag, Tammy and I, with our kids, Carmel and Adam. They were like this.
Now they're like this.
Now they're like this. Now we have grandchildren like this. And there was a period of, I don't remember, 10, maybe more years, that when you went there, well, we did annual 6-month checks. I could not come to Flag every year, every 6 months, so we went there once a year in the summer when the kids were out of school, and we spent like 2 months at Flag, and always had to do lower condition for not showing up after 6 months, for coming late, but that became a routine. We handled it easily and quickly. And in those days, on the 6-month checks, you did FPRD. You did a long sec check, FPRD auditing. Later it got canceled. Somebody discovered it was an arbitrary. And FPRD auditing for me was the most fantastic action, because it really cleans you up, whole track for anything you ever did, any misconception you ever had, any wrongdoing you ever did. Fantastic action. And there's one specific example, if you have another 2 minutes for me, I want to tell you about. So I was doing a lot of FPRD, and I had huge wins on it. It was fantastic. But the one thing that always came up, and I'm talking now we're in 2020, 2021, I'm talking 2000, 2005, like 15 years ago. And every time I come to Flag and they ask me how I am doing, I say, great. And when they start talking to me about the mission and Scientology, I have tears in my eyes. Every time. I tremble with tears in my eyes, and maybe it'll turn on soon again. And they ask me, what is it? Either the ethics officer or the DFP or in session. And I say, I am worried about the future of Scientology. Because I can see that David Miscavige is a lunatic and he's destroying Scientology. And this comes up every time I'm at Flag for years. And I tell him what I see and how I come up with this conclusion. Miscavige is a madman and obviously he's destroying Scientology. So every time I say this, what do you know? The next thing is a sec check. Of course. What would you do? What would you do? You're a theist. What would you do with a PC? I do a sec check, and we run the whole thing. And the most prominent, the sec check question that came up all the time is, has COB missed a withhold on you? Because they don't say David Miscavige. They only call him COB. And I say, how could he miss a withhold on me? I've never met him. I've never spoken to him. I saw him many times at Flag walking around. Anyhow, has COB missed a withhold on you? Of course, when we clean it, and they say, well, how do you see it now? I say, same thing. He's a lunatic. He's destroying Scientology. So one time I come, this is about 15 years ago. We do, again, 6 months check and the interview and the arrival interview. And then Meredith was the DFP. Now, Meredith then, I think I have her name right, was already then maybe 80 years old. She was many, many years an auditor. She was with LRH on the Apollo. But now, at her old age, they made her a DFP. She could no longer audit. She died a few years later. Fantastic lady. And she calls me in, very kind, very gentle lady. And she says, Danny, we have to do a special program with you. And I said, what is it? Well, we have to do a special FPLD rundown, tailor-made program, because you continually criticize COB, and you say bad things about COB, and you're in disagreement with COB, and you have your own opinions, your own ideas. So we're going to do a tailor-made FPLD program that will handle your whole track as an executive, as a manager, as a leader. Clean it up. Because if you're so critical of our great leader, COB, that you must have your own charge on this from your own past. And I say, great, I'd love to do it. Because I do know that on my whole track, I have many, many times been in a position of manager or executive or leader. And for sure, I accumulated some of my own overts or mistakes or failures. So I'd love to clean it up. So we go in session, and because it was so important for them, they put as my auditor, I think her name is Kate Kirtley. And she was Tech Sec at Flag, she was QualSec, fantastic auditor. The best auditing I've ever had. Like, she was smooth as a warm knife going through butter. You could not feel you were in auditing, and you could not feel that withholds are being pulled from you. It was like so smooth, so natural, and like this took about a month, and we go in session every day, once or twice. I think I used up more than 25 hours on this, and then I look at it one day, and I say to my auditor, okay, I feel totally handled as a leader, as a manager. I've been doing it for so many years. I made so many mistakes on my track. It's all clean. And I tell her, I think I've EP'd FPRD. Like, no more secrets, no more withholds, no more confusions. Everything is crystal clear. I have a perfect view of it. And she says, well, she acknowledges the win. I write a success story. And Meredith calls me back, the DFP, and she says, wow, Danny, you had a big one in session. And I say, yeah. And she says, well done, you've completed the action. I say, wow, great, I feel fantastic. And she says, so Danny, now how does it look to you, what you've been saying about COB? And I say, now it's definitely clear to me that the guy is a lunatic destroying Scientology. No doubt about it. You should have seen her face. She went, So for her, it was a bit of a shocker. So yeah, so that was a big one at Flag.
Okay, so this cognition, does it have anything to do with leaving the church?
Well, it was a long process, you know. It wasn't like I one morning woke up out of the blue and said, okay, let's leave the church. It took me years. There was this time which was like my own personal certainty that it wasn't an aberration of mine. It wasn't like I had a big crime or a withhold and I was blowing. You know, a blowing is a sudden departure due to missed withhold. You don't want your withholds exposed, you run away. So that wasn't it for sure. I had to know that I'm acting totally rationally and totally responsibly, because when I leave the church, it affected many people around me, you know, the Dror Center and all our public. And I wanted to make sure I had it perfectly correct. And so there was this action which helped me a lot to view things clearly and to view my responsibility as the manager, the general, the managing partner of this group, and that what I do is for the good of all dynamics. And then when I came to Flag again around 2009 or 2010 was the last time I was at Flag on services. Again, they check me all the time and they look for something. But this something that they look for just isn't there. And they interrogate Tammy about my crimes. And she says, I'm not aware of anything he's doing. And they accuse Tammy. They tell her, you're not seeing his crimes. And she says to them, well, do you think at night he goes out to rob banks or to peddle drugs or to rape little boys? I mean, well, what is he doing that I don't see? Well, he's doing some crime. You don't see it. You need to divorce him, of course. That was their conclusion. She needs to divorce me. And when all the sec checking did not give them the result they wanted, I routed myself to Qual. I said to them, look, to the DFP, something isn't working here. I need to go to Qual. I went to Qual, and these are the top Qual terminals at Flag, AJ Sprecher, and, well, I don't remember all the names. And I sit with this Class 9 criming officer at Flag, and I say, look, the AGC here, the CS, they've been sec-checking me on COB for the past 10 years, every time I come here. Tens, hundreds of hours by now, sec-checking on this subject. But still, I view him as a lunatic who's destroying Scientology. And you think I'm saying this about him because I have hidden oversight committed, my crimes. So something about the tech isn't working, is it? Because you do all the sec checking, nothing comes up, and it doesn't change my view of David Miscavige. So either the tech isn't right, or could it be you're not applying it correctly? So she pulls out, and she gives me a long list of all the references on sec checking, missed withholds, overts, all the phenomena. I studied again, everything I've studied many, many times before. And I said, well, okay, here it is. I mean, if what I'm saying would be criticism, carping, one carping criticism due to my own overts, it should clean up on sec checking. But it's not changing, but this isn't working. And at this point, she says, well, you'll have to go back to the AGC. And I say, how comes I'm not handled? There is LRH policy on this, saying a person coming to Qual has to be handled at Qual, not sent back to HGC. She said, I'm sorry, I have instructions from the CS. You go back to the AGC. I went back to the AGC, another few minor actions. They didn't know what to do with me, and they just sent me back home. So here we are. So at this point, I knew that they don't know what to do with me. It was clear that the auditing at Flag had become political. Political in the sense that it's not for my good, but for the good of an executive. So they're CSing for David Miscavige. They were not CSing me for myself because I was offending, I was happy. And I had no problem saying David Miscavige is a lunatic destroying Scientology. And I'm offending on it. And there's no miswithhold when I say it. And no hidden crimes, you see. And this is borne out now because since we've left the church, you see our statistics. And when we were declared and expelled from the church, the OSA guys were going around to all our public saying, well, Dror Center is shutting down, everybody's leaving them, and in a couple of months, they're going to be gone. No more Dror Centers, so you have to come to the Tel Aviv org. But in actuality, what happened is, of course, the opposite. When we left the church in June 2012, we had about 50 people on lines. When we left, about 10 or 12 guys had to leave us. They stayed in the church because of family connections or threats by the church. So they were afraid they left us. So we were down in July from 50 to about 40 on lines. And ever since, we've just been going up and up and up. We took the correct actions. We studied how to deliver the full bridge, the OT levels. Most recently, the 3 fabulous L rundowns. So now we deliver the whole bridge, the L's, everything. And our stats are just going up and up and up.
Excellent.